Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book loving, notebook hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology. What's that? That's the study of books and reading and notebooks and writing mixed with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. Here, you'll find episodes exploring the reading and writing life and how they can make our actual lives better. You'll get book recommendations and notebooking prompts around particular themes, and you'll even hear from authors and special guests who can fuel our reading and writing hearts and help us take inspired action in our own daily practices. So, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, and I'm here today to talk about your bookshelves. Now, if you're listening to this episode in real time, it is March. And for me in upstate New York, March has always been, and likely always will be, a very, very long feeling month. The weather is up and down. Maybe it's snowing, maybe it's raining, maybe it's cold, maybe it's damp, maybe it's windy. In terms of the school year, we had a break in February and a break in April and this long stretch of March in between. It just feels like it's a long month while we wait for winter to end and spring to begin. Now, we can cope in lots of different ways when we find ourselves in one of those long month kind of spells, right? Maybe some of us go out and walk. Maybe some of us will spring to get here by planting our seedlings inside to get ready for our outdoor garden, which I don't do, but I really, really would love to. How do I pass the time of a really long month? What is my fix of choice? Ah, I buy too many books. I always find myself buying books. When I look at my spending habits, I buy more books in March than almost any other month, even summer, even getting ready for the holiday. I just think it's that itch to pass the time. And for me, buying books it's my thing, right? And I know it is a lot of your things too. But here's the thing. I don't always read them. So, like you, I have many, many, many more books on my shelves than I can possibly probably read. Why can I probably read them? Because I am still buying new books, and I am not alone. Research from the National Literacy Trust says that in our homes, on our bookshelves, there are over $200 of unread books just sitting there. Now, in my case, I bet it's a bit more than $200 worth of unread books. You can try to hypothesize what your number would be. But my bookshelf, unfortunately, because of this, can bring a bit of guilt. And maybe you feel it too. You know, they're supposed to be sources of joy. And look at those books that you've read and look at how much knowledge you've gained from all of those books sitting there. But a lot of times my eyes go right to that tower of books spiraling out of control that I haven't read. And then I feel guilty that I've bought the books and spent the money and I haven't read it. And then I overthink it. Well, which one should I read first? Should I read that new one coming out? Oh, I probably should get to that old one on my bookshelf. And I don't want my reading life to feel that way. Right? Do you get this too? I'm sure you do. And I know you do because in my Get Literate community back in 2022, in March, I chose the one word theme of minimize. And the idea was to clear the clutter, spring clean, get ready for the season that was coming. And we ended up having a really wonderful focus on minimizing our bookshelves and weeding out and clearing out and donating and actually reading the books that we already had. And so a tradition was born. And March became Read Your Shelves month in my Get Literate community. In 2023, the theme for March was Sundoku, that idea that we surround ourselves with more books that we can possibly read as a way to spark reading our shelves. In 2024, I had a really cool bookish word, bibliolatry. And in 2025, my bookish word for March is voracious. We are going to be voracious readers of our own shelves in the month of March. And that's what we pledge to do. And I say pledge quite loosely, right? We just want to give a little bit more love to our current bookshelves, to our current digital lists than we might typically do. And I'd love for you to join us. If that sounds like something you want to do, you can head to the show notes. You can head to getliterate.co. You can head to Substack and find me there. It's $5 a month and we have some fun. There's book calendars and book clubs and notebook prompts and member spotlights and all sorts of things. But this month, we are pledging to read our shelves and we're doing book swaps. And there's some other fun things planned to really focus on the books that we already have. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to explore the why and how of reading the books we already own. So here's the why. I've got three whys, three pretty powerful whys, I think, to convince you to go on a spending halt of books in the month of March, and maybe a little bit of a bonus snuck in there. And then I'm going to end with 4 fun things you could do to entice yourself to read those books on your shelves. So number 1, why should you in March pledge not to get any new books, but read the books that you already have? Well, you have them for a reason. I am a true believer that every book finds us for a reason. So at some point, you looked at that book, you read the cover and the back blurb of that book, and you thought, I want it. It's a good book for me. I want to read it. Or maybe someone gifted it to you and said, you'll love this book. You want it. Trust me, you'll love to read it. Either way, either yourself or someone else thought of you and thought that this book would be a good match. And just because it's sitting on your shelf doesn't mean that it's not still a good match. So looking at those books, remind yourselves, hey, I put them there for a reason. I wanted to read them. Let me go back and pay a little extra attention to them. So reason number 1, why you should read your shelves, it's there for a reason, and reading it will help you remember. Reason number 2, I love this reason. Clutter impacts our emotional feelings. There is a lot of research out there that shows clutter, too much visual clutter, too much stuff. It actually can make us feel overwhelmed. It can make us feel anxious. You know, I love Gretchen Rubin and her book, Outer Order Leads to Inner Calm, right? That is true. Research shows it. If your outer physical area is clutter-free, and I don't want to say minimal, but if it's clutter-free and functional and free of extra stuff that could get in our way, we feel better. Our minds are calmer. They're more productive. They are not as scattered. The same thing could apply to our reading life. If every time we look at our bookshelf, we just see this overgrown thing, right, with books two piles deep and stacked up on top of each other, and a pile here and a pile there, just looking at it can be overwhelming and think, oh, I don't want to deal with that. I'm just going to go get the newest one. I'm just going to go get my library hold so I don't have to look at that hot mess over there, right? And so clearing that clutter of your bookshelf can help you feel better about your reading life. And having less clutter on your bookshelf can actually reduce the reading decision fatigue we get, right? There's a whole podcast I love with Anne Bogle that's What Should I Read Next? Because that is an eternal question of a bookish person. Having limited choices on your bookshelf of what to read next out of that TBR pile can help reduce the overwhelm you might feel when deciding which book to read next. So there's reason number 2. clear the bookshelf clutter, to clear your reading life clutter, to feel better. Reason number 3, reading the books that you already have on your shelves saves you money, and it encourages sustainable reading, right? Reading the books you already have, making use of the things you already have in your home overall, it's environmentally friendly, right? You're not buying new books, you're not killing more trees, right? And I know there's a catch-22 here, because the more books you buy, the more authors you support and the more small businesses you support. But just for a month, by paying attention to the books you already have, you're doing your part for sustainability, and your wallet will appreciate it. Now, I do have one little sneaky bonus in here as well, because so far I've been talking about reading the unread books on your shelf. But that doesn't mean you can't go back and reread the read books on your shelf too, right? Books get better with time in so many ways, right? They smell better. You still have that bookish smell, more hands touch books, more readers read books, more stories feel imprinted on the page when you have an older book in your hand. And the same goes for the books on your shelf. If you take out a book that you read 10 years ago, you're connecting with that earlier version of you, and you're rereading the book that now may sound completely different based on the season of life that you're in. And that is a real treat when that happens. So, why should you read the books on your shelf? You have them for a reason. Why not remember what it is? Bookshelf clutter can clutter our reading life and impact our brains and cause decision fatigue. It can save money and is environmentally friendly, and we can reconnect with books and an earlier version of ourselves. So if there's the why, let's talk about the how. Now, I know it's pretty simple, right? Go to your bookshelf, pick up a book that you want to read, and read it. But as we know as readers, it is not always as simple as that. So I've got 4 suggestions for you to help you decide which book on your shelf to read, so that decision fatigue, it is not an issue. So number 1 is a very simple idea, which is to create a visual. Create a visual of the books that you still have on your shelf that you have not read and you want to, or perhaps the books that you want to reread. Now, this visual can be a list. Just grab a piece of paper, stand in front of your bookshelf, scan the spines, and write down the titles you haven't read yet. Or you can head to my community, getliterate.co, or find me on Substack, and you can print the bookshelf printable. It actually looks like a bookshelf full of books with empty spines, and you can jot in the title of the book so that it is a more fun, bookish looking kind of printable. Or if you don't want a printable, but you still want something visual, clear off a shelf on your bookshelf that is only for your TBR. A lot of times our bookshelves can get all willy-nilly as we stuff books in there. Clear out a shelf, or grab a bag, grab a bin, grab a basket, go to Target and buy something new if you want to treat yourself that way, since we're not buying books. And put your TBR books in it that you really want to get to, and put it somewhere where you'll see it. It's in your living room, it's in your office, it's on your kitchen counter if that's where you want it. Having that visual reminder will help you remember that these books are important to you. Having a list, a printable, a shelf, or some sort of bin can help you put them into one place and put those in your attention front and center. Now, if you want to have a little more fun, here are a couple of ways to really get creative with the books that are still on your shelf and entertain you in the long month of March. So one idea is to create a TBR jar. So a TBR jar is exactly what it sounds like. It is a jar with slips of paper inside, and on those slips of paper are the titles of the books you haven't read yet that are on your shelf. So instead of standing in front of your bookshelf with a piece of paper, you have multiple small pieces of paper. Every title goes on a distinct piece of paper. You toss it in the jar. You can decorate the jar, put a ribbon around it, put stickers on it, whatever you want to do. And when it's time to read your next book, take decision fatigue out of it. Go over to your jar, shake it up a bit, close your eyes, reach in, pull a piece of paper, boom. There you go. You commit to read whatever you pulled out of your TBR jar. Fun, right? I've got another one. How about bookshelf bingo? Bookshelf bingo. This is where you create a bingo board for yourself, right? And you can make it as small or as big as you need to. If there's only a couple of books on your shelf you haven't read yet, then your bingo board can just have a couple of bingo squares on it, maybe 9. If you've got a lot, maybe you've got a typical 25 square bingo board. The fun part is creating the categories. So look at all of the books you still have left to read and then put some categories on there. It doesn't have to be in a traditional bingo format where it's bingo across the top. You don't need particular categories across the top. You just need to label those squares with something fun. Like one square could say a book that you've owned over a year. Another square could be read a book with a blue cover. Another square could be read the book that you have, but you forgot why you bought it. Another one can be read a book you started, but never finished. Read a book that was gifted to you by a friend. Read a book that you wouldn't typically pick up and you can't believe is on your bookshelf. Right? You get the idea. You put these fun categories on your bingo board. Now, no one is calling your numbers. No one is calling out which one you should do. You just look at your bingo board and you pick one. Challenge yourself to get bingo, which is 5 in a row on a typical board, maybe 3 in a row on a smaller board, or just try to black out your whole bingo board before you buy a new book. So try to get a bingo, try to get a blackout in the month of March so that April you can go crazy and buy some of those new books that you want. Now, the next one is really fun. This one takes a little bit more preparation, but if you are creative or if you just want to take some extra time for yourself, I highly recommend doing this. I want to do this. I probably won't because I always end up filling my time with something else that needs to be due. But what if you took all of those unread books on your bookshelf and we wrapped them up in wrapping paper, in craft paper, and we created a blind date with a book for ourselves? Wouldn't that be so fun? Take some of those books that you know you want to read, wrap them up, decorate them, get creative, put stickers on them. Maybe you even write clues on the outside of the wrapping paper, like some blind date with the books do, and put them in a basket. And when it is time to read your next book, just pick one of your blind date books and surprise yourself. You could really have some fun too and, tape a new bookmark to the wrapping paper, put a new pack of sticky notes in there, something that will really elevate the experience so that you're reading a book you already have, you're saving money there, but you've got a little bookish treat wrapped inside that blind date with a book that can just make you feel like you're having a lot of fun, even though you are by yourself. Now, the last thing you could do is join some sort of community, have accountability with a reading buddy or a book bestie, and pledge to read some of those books on your shelves. That's what we do for each other inside our Get Literate community, where we're pledging loosely. We're not going to get any new books, right? But we are going to try to give our current bookshelves a little bit of extra love. So there you have it. 3 reasons and a little bonus of why you should spend the month of March reading the books you already have, and 4 fun ways to make that as easy and as fun as possible. So what are you waiting for? Right? Your books have been waiting for you for a long time on your bookshelves. Thankfully, they are patient. But I hope you'll join me this March and pledge to read as many books that you already own on your shelves as you possibly can. and tell me about it. As always, find me in the show notes for this episode on alitlife.com and comment in the comment section the books you already own that you plan to read. You can head to social media, find me at @AffinitaLit and leave me a comment on the post for this episode, or push play and that little audio button and let me know which books that you already own are going to be on your TBR. And of course, we'd love to have you inside our Get Literate community and join this challenge. So you can find us there at getliterate.co, or you can head to Substack and you can search my name and you can find our community there. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope this inspired you to read your shelves in March with me. So go grab that printable, go grab that piece of paper, grab your wrapping paper, and let's have some fun reading the books we already own. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking inspiration, live events, giveaways, and more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. Learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing, if you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow, and it builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.